Well, my name is Clifford Eberly. I'm the Exhibitions Associate at Hicks Art Center Gallery, and welcome to a studio visit chat with Stacie Scott. Stacie, you have a painting right now in the Realities Fugue show. It's in the gallery. It's a collage piece, and so I wanted to meet you in your studio space, which is phenomenal. It has such wonderful light. And the materials here are very inspiring to me. And but before we sort of chat about the relationship of your work to the exhibition we have going on, I wanted to find out more about you. And when did you first start making art?
I first started making art as a child, and my mother was extremely artistic person in many different modes, and she really got me onto it, and just my whole life was like that, and my siblings the same. Okay. And so it was a very creative household, and that was the beginning, and I just stuck with it my whole life, really.
Wow. Do you consider yourself self-taught, or
I do, Clifford. I mean, of course, I was exposed even as a child to regional art centers, classes, that kind of thing, absolutely. Okay. And living in the Philadelphia area, we did all the museums and the exposure, that kind of thing, small courses, classes.
All right.
I had in the 80s, I lived in outside of Chaddsford, and I studied for a brief period with Thomas Bostel, who was a really tremendous teacher, and then I moved to Bucks County, and I have a lot of influence from my colleagues.
I see.
My many colleagues.
So then, you started out working in Bucks County then as an artist in like the 80s and 90s, do you say?
In the 80s. I came here
Okay.
in 1980, and I was working for the Quakers at Chandler Hall Health Services in Newtown as a rec therapist. So I was doing art with older people and doing my own art on the side, and that just continued. And last year, after 30 years, I was teaching part-time art at the Friends School in Quakertown.
Got it.
So the whole time I've been doing both things.
Teaching and
making.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Making and selling.
Right. How does your own studio practice affect or inform your work with older folks or in teaching at the Friends School?
It absolutely. And also, I mean, I've also done taught professional workshops to other artists and special collage workshops in Mendocino, California, and things like that. All of those teaching experiences are affected by my work in the studio, and likewise, because I feel like you should always be teaching on the edge of what you're learning.
That's interesting. I really enjoy that. It kind of keeps it fresh and on the front of your mind, really.
It's a process of inquiry, I feel, you know. So, yeah, it has always been hand in hand.
Sure. Me. I guess, and true, also when, as an artist, when you're working in your studio and you're discovering and experimenting, that excitement can be easily translated to when you're teaching people.
Absolutely.
It's almost the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's so much, and also in any kind of workshop or classroom environment, there's like peer teaching that goes on that,
sure,
you know, really expands things.
Sure.
So.
Does that ever make you feel like, oh, I should have known that to be able to inform my students, or do you kind of like that?
You know, Clifford, I've always presented myself as a teaching artist as opposed to an educator. So I don't feel I have to know the right terms or you know, I'm strictly a teaching artist.
I see. Well, I haven't really thought of that separation, but I understand it.
I think it's different.
Right.
Yeah. So my background is all about doing and trying and experimenting, and rather than I learned specific,
technique,
procedure.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's great. So we're sitting in front of, or next to, and in front of two canvases. One's the larger one behind us, and then the one over here has a tree. And is that a landscape as well?
Yes, it is a landscape at the moment. Likewise, this is at the moment, because you really don't know how things are going to go. I mean, This one's more developed. But yeah, at the moment, but then sort of other things have entered. You know what I started to think of with this one, Clifford? It started out as a real snow landscape because we've had these beautiful snows in the last few days.
Sure.
And I just look out the window and it's right there. But then this like branch and these fingers came out, and I was thinking about as a child in the 50s, 60s, the cartoon trees that were like really scary, and they had the jazz music, but they would be like, oh, and their mouths would open, and I thought, oh man, I went on a trail with this guy, and started putting statements in there too. So who knows where that's going to go? You never know.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way in my own, when I'm painting as well. It's this layered journey, and you're reacting to the work as you do it, and that's how I prefer to work. I do like to set rules sometimes. Do you do the same thing, or?
Sometimes I do, yes. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I will set a rule of staying within a certain color range and not getting out of that. More monochromatic. And sometimes other rules too, but a lot of times I break the rules that I set for myself.
Sure, yeah. And when did, or if you can sort of pinpoint this, I'm curious about the use of text in your pieces, or things with words in them. Would you think there was a moment where you started doing that, or did it kind of evolve over time?
It did evolve over time. However, in general, my work is materials driven. So it kind of like whatever materials come into my life, for whatever reason, that leads me in a new direction. And there used to be a tremendous gallery owner / framer in Lambertville, Grace Cruteau, and she had this gallery, and there were several. It was in the Lace Works in Lambertville, and she called me on the phone one day. And she goes, "Stacie, you have to get down here. There is a dumpster full of magazines that are used by graphic designers that they have just pitched." And I loaded my car with those. I'm still using them today, but a lot of text came out of those. That kind of got me started with that.
Sure. And I think the material that we find in the world at a certain moment really captures what's going on in several different ways. It's like it could be culturally, but at the same time there could be some political things going on.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's important to look at like these moments where advertising and design is sort of, I guess, not thrown out, but you found it in a way that to sort of repurpose these goods that.
Absolutely. I'm really big on repurposing in general. I'm a walker. I walk every day, and I'm always looking at the street like, I know there's going to be something that happened in the nighttime, and it's going to be new out here on the street, and invariably there's something. It could be like a little piece of paper that has a word on it, or a letter, or, a squished snake that, has dried on the road, and I just grab that stuff and use it for years.
Yeah. How do you think the area, like Lambertville, New Hope, are there any kind of wish lists that you have, or wishes that you could say, like, oh, this was happening then, and I kind of think there was an energy at a certain time that you wish would come back, or do you not really have this nostalgia that,
I mean,
for the area?
I have some of the nostalgia for the area, but I came in the 80s, and a lot of the people that are my contemporaries who have been here all along, their nostalgia goes back a little bit before that, before the 80s, and I appreciate it. I love, like, I know all about all the dance clubs and the after hours clubs and all that stuff, and I like that whole culture. I miss that. But I think for me, this area, besides the people and the excitement of knowing, of encountering so many people in all the arts in this area, besides that, I think the landscape, the beauty of the river, and all of that is what really attracts me. I mean, that is an endless fascination for me. I mean, besides my work that is not related to the land, that is always there.
Right. Well, and I think that ties, our kind of caretaking in a way of the Lenape, how we've kind of come into the area, and we are kind of, not really custodians, but as artists, I think we're much more in tune with our surroundings. Would you say that's true? Or
Yes, I think so. I think that, for me anyway, when I'm driving around or walking around, I'm seeing like patterns, and especially with the remaining agricultural life here, which is dwindling. But I think those patterns, those fields, the lines, it's all really fascinating, and I feel, we have to preserve that.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There is, when I moved here only 3 years ago, I grew up in Lancaster County, but I never really came over here for much of anything because we didn't have family over here. But when I relocated here 3 years ago and started getting closer to the river, there's this ancient feeling to this area that
there is.
I don't really necessarily sense in other areas, or maybe I wasn't attuned to it as much as I was when I moved here, because I think the acknowledgement has the land acknowledgements have become very potent, and they're used. How do you think that's an important use or like a practice of?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the river is a magical tie for all of us to this area. And like you said, when you drive along either side of the river, you see all those cliffs, the rocks coming up, and the dark areas from those cliffs that go to the river, and how it changes as you go further north. It becomes, more icy on the roads, and everything is affected by the river, I think.
Yeah.
And that's truly that's a deep history. I mean, I feel that very strongly.
Sure, yeah. So in your studio that we're sitting in, take us through like a typical day for you. Like, do you start early, or do you prefer kind of working later in the day, or?
I start pretty early in the morning. I sort of have like regular punch clock hours. And when I come in, I have stuff in progress always, and so I kind of dabble on those and spend a lot of time looking at them. But at the same time, it's really helpful for me to like sort of build collages on the side, just to keep myself loose, instead of getting like with a painting or a piece that's almost done and there's a little bit of like, what's the right next thing, you know, keep it loose and fun. You know how, or at least for me, the beginning of a work, it's always a blast because you're just like throwing the stuff on and it doesn't matter what happens and then as you get more and more invested in it, it becomes a little harder.
Sure.
To just, so I keep a couple different things going at the same time. There's also little business things that you have to do always.
Right.
You know, that takes time.
Yeah, it does.
You know, I think people sometimes don't realize that artists they're making the work, but if they have a business, then they're also running a business.
Sure.
On the side.
Yeah.
You know, of their work.
Right.
So there's always that kind of a little bit of that clerical stuff to do, and just trying to keep fresh, looking at other people's work, getting, you know, excited about what shows are coming around here and in New York and Philadelphia, just, you know, London, whatever, just kind of keeping up with things. But mostly I stay in here and then I eat my lunch in here so that I can look at the stuff and think about it and you know, drink my tea time and everything, and then I shut down around 4 o'clock.
Yeah, that sounds.
Yeah, I keep like sort of a regular working day.
Right. In your bio, I was reading. Am I mistaken that, or correct? And you have a dance interest or background?
Yes. I'm not a trained dancer, but I have always been really interested in dance. I've studied all different kinds of dance just for my own. But I've been really lucky in the last 8 or 9 years to be in the European Dance Theater Company, which is directed by Linda Erickson, who did the music for The Feud, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's been great because we've done we've done several live performances, but we've also made films. Which is really dance theater, so it's both. Sometimes non-spoken, sometimes a little bit of spoken, but mostly music driven, and that's been really fun. And then as a person working with children at the school, I always had a modern dance component that I did with them.
Oh, nice. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate movement and dance. It's an incredible way of expression.
Absolutely.
You know?
It absolutely is. And I guess, I mean, I'm hoping that will always be part of, you know, something that I'm able to do. Yeah, I need to move. I'm pretty much, I'm moving around my studio. I'm standing up most of the time because I like to move. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of the artist Bruce Nauman when he made that video of him, I think he called it Mapping the Studio, where he literally just walked around the studio like back and forth and really kind of absorbed the space in a way, and I think I feel like that's what you do a lot in the paintings that I've seen of yours in person, these being only the one in the gallery and then today in the studio. I feel like the spaces you've created and continue to create are they have this feeling of grandness or big space to them. And is that something you set out to do, or?
I mean, I didn't start that way. I started pretty small and then I just kept going, and then when I also have a little commercial business. So I do paintings for designers who are doing corporate spaces.
Okay.
And a lot of them are really big.
Okay.
And so that got me used to like using my entire body when I'm like moving around the canvas. And I actually really like it. I mean, I'm a pretty tall, big person with long arms, and it feels good to get up there and you know. The collage on a large scale is a little trickier.
Okay. How is that? Like,
Well,
just
you
the
have to get your
material?
gluing, you've got to get your gluing sorted out and, you know, get it so that, you know, this isn't dry before the other one's wet and if it's big pieces of stuff.
Got it.
So it's challenging. I've figured it out, but that was a little bit of a leap for me.
Mhm.
But no, I like the large scale work. As long as I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's almost I wouldn't say a luxury, but like some, you know, with sometimes more, I guess, in cities, artists don't have as much space to work that big.
It's definitely a space issue. You have to have the space. It's really hard. And I mean, even in here, like when you're moving around a couple big paintings, it's a challenge. Yes, and the other thing is, not everyone can buy them.
Sure.
It's a luxury, as you say, for me to do it and sometimes store them.
Right.
You know, I mean, and also, you know, change them up if, you know, because big canvases are also expensive.
Yeah. To make and to
Yes,
to collect.
absolutely.
In the painting, in the gallery right now at Hicks, it's called Buckingham Soy, and the word soy meaning the agricultural product.
Fields, yeah.
Right. And I wanted to ask sort of how that piece started, or were you thinking of where we are now, like close to you live in the Buckingham Valley, and so that was where it came from?
Yes, you'll probably see when you drive out the driveway, you'll see the actual drive, which is in that painting.
Got it.
So every summer, or spring, fall, summer, when I'm out, I do get outside. I mean, I really want to bust out of the studio and get out, and I move around the property in different places, but I am really fascinated, I have to say, by the dark gray black driveway which curves, and then how the agricultural materials, which is either corn or soy depending on the year, go with that. So if it's corn, it gets to be almost like 9 feet tall, and it forms like a wall of green surrounding the whole thing. I mean, it's really fascinating. It's very architectural. You know, or if it's soy, it's low and different. You know, you see the lines where they've plotted. It's fascinating to me, endlessly fascinating to me, but with the painting that's in the show at the Hicks right now, when the season changes, the soy changes color. It's not green anymore. It turns like orange, gold, pink, you know, and that's where the color interest came. But it's those colors with that dark gray black line. Yeah,
I was standing in front of it with the faculty at Bucks, and she really liked the use of that gray piece of paper that's kind of,
it's got writing on it.
Yeah, or it was, I think, above that.
Oh, above that.
It has sort of an expressive quality to it, but it kind of breaks up the space of the painting really wonderfully. And I think for her that was like the decider, like that made the piece just even better, or just not better, but just it made it more dynamic, and it was a key, I think, for her, in her mind.
Actually, I did that collage outdoors, which is tricky, but actually did it on site. I had a table set up out there, and I did it on site, and that really, it was great to be able to do that and just hit those pieces just right. And you know, an influence on that kind of approach would be Diebenkorn or Wayne Thibault. Both of those, that, you know, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, I can see it for sure.
I love that the distant, the close, you know, the flat, plain.
Right. How much time did you spend in California? I'm just thinking right away when you mentioned Diebenkorn, like the Ocean Park series.
I have very, very close friends who are artists that live in the Mendocino area. So I go out there periodically. I haven't spent, you know, any long periods of time, but I go out there, and they're involved with the Mendocino Art Center. So I've taught there a couple of times with them. Yeah. So, yeah, it's great out there. And there's headlands, those beautiful headlands up there. Yeah.
That's great. With the sort of the therapeutic end of side of your work, I wonder if you have any like moments that you can tell us about that were just sort of eye-opening to you, that stand out over time, like that were just, you knew that you were making an impression, or someone made an impression on you.
Working with other people, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, there's been so many over the years, but I'm thinking of a guest. I did a guest artist at a convent for geriatric nuns. And I had a group of about, I guess, 6 or 7 people in the group, and we were doing collages. And I often do this project where I give you a piece of paper or a substrate of some kind, and there's a cutout piece of like half of a leopard or something, you know, stuck on already in some place on there, and then it's up to you to do the rest. You know, I have lots of materials there for you, and paint, et cetera, et cetera. And this one, now, mind you, these women had like early dementia, different levels of dementia. But I had one person who said to me, she created this entire story and beautifully done, you know, but the important thing was she told me an extensive story about the painting. And it included the fact that this is a very educated person who had a lot of mythological history, and you know, and brought that to the fore in the story. Like, this character was, you know, they remembered all the names of these important, you know, deities, and, you know, it was fascinating. And it told me, like, oh, wow, this is such a powerful thing that it can help somebody, like, pull out of them what they've stored up there, even if they have dementia.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That was a really big moment for me. I mean, I had a lot, but that I love that.
Yeah, that's so impressive, and to have that tool that you can present something and you never know what you're going to experience from the result. I really enjoy that a lot. And finally, with the show at Hicks, there are 4 pieces of art. Yours is one of 4 that are in the reality, virtual reality portion of the show, which is it's interesting because they're in, you know, to experience it you have to go in a separate room, which I like that sort of division of, like, you're introduced to the visual in, you know, physical reality, and then you go into these rooms and experience it digitally. Did you, when you sort of saw the final result, like, had you ever done anything like that before? Where
never, and we spent the first, like, 3 months as artists just creating with the tools that are available in virtual reality, creating art and creating spaces that you could fly over, walk into, you know, that I'm trying to remember what the name of the tool is. Anyway, it's a painting, drawing, sculpture tool that we used, and my living room was the studio, and you could just put that headset on, go in there, and start making a world of art that was, you know, this big or as big as the whole room.
Right.
Really incredible. So that was my first experience with using that technology in a non-gaming way.
Right.
Which was sort of one of the points of this whole project.
Right.
Was to show people that yes, this is a tool that could do so many more things. Anyhow, then when we got to the point of putting the film together and we realized it wasn't going to work to use that they were going to use actual works of art. When I saw it the other day, I was like very impressed with seeing my painting like go into bits and fly all over, and then come back together. It's really, it's cool. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Do you think you'll investigate any, try to do anything else additional?
I could, yeah, I would. I mean, I really enjoyed it, and actually, there's people in my world that I want to go to Hicks so they can experience it, because once you put that headset on, you're like you're in a different place.
Right.
And it's really fun.
Yeah, I think so too. So yeah, it'll be up until March the 1st, which is, I feel like it'll be just around the corner, which is, time flies. But I wanted to end with just one more question for you is, how do you think why does art matter for you, and how it could help other people?
Well, there's a lot of things about that. It's a voice. Art is a voice, whether it's poetry writing, whether it's dance, whether it's visual arts. It's a way of having a voice. It's a way for me of also like synthesizing all of the information that's coming into me, and especially in very difficult and emotional times, whether it's personal or society. I'm very, aware of what's going on, and I have to process it somehow.
Right.
And art is a way of doing that. Right. And the other part of it that I think is really important is it's a lifelong process. And that's great. I mean, if you have something you can do lifelong, and it's fun.
Right. Yeah, that was one of my...
It's just fun.
Yeah. That was one of my New Year's... It wasn't a resolution, really. It was, it was just a way I wanted to approach the coming months, or time in general, is a level of fun, and not to get worked up about deadlines so much, and and not worry about so much about failure, or what failure is really, because it can lead you into other directions that.
Absolutely. I've worked on several different teams with a musician, a dancer, myself, and a theater person, and we've gone and taught a lot of different schools in Philadelphia, etc. But when we're doing these training sessions with teachers, the big thing is with the arts is don't think, just do.
Interesting. Yeah, that's wild. it kind of is sort of the antithesis of like conceptual art in a way, because
Oh yeah.
conceptual art is very into, or it's the idea that counts the
Yeah.
most. But you're saying with, as students or when you're teaching, it's much more about the doing that
It's the doing.
that
Yeah.
that helps pull things together for people.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. I like that. Well, I really appreciate this time. I feel like we could have a lot more conversation, and I'm sure we will in the future. But I appreciate your participating in the show at the gallery and being part of that Realities Fugue, and allowing me to come and visit. It's been great so far.
Thank you, Clifford.
Thank you.
And I'm very happy to be part of it.
Thank you.